Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India, India's voice to the world. I'm Preeti Kaur. Coming up in the next 1 hour. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has virtually addressed the G20 trade ministers meeting in Jaipur, saying trade and globalization lifts billions from extreme poverty, adding it's our responsibility to rebuild confidence and resilient global chains.
We have moved away from red tape to red carpet and liberalized FDI flows.
India erupts with excitement over its successful moon landing as world leaders congratulate Prime Minister Narendra Modi on the mission's success. Europe's soaring temperatures are affecting the highest peaks of Mont Blanc in the French Alps. Japan begins discharging treated nuclear wastewater into the Pacific Ocean. And Indian chess prodigy R. Pragnananda faces a tie-break today against world number 1 chess player in the World Cup final. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi virtually addressed the G20 trade ministers meeting currently taking place in Jaipur in the western state of Rajasthan in India. During his address on Thursday, he said that India is committed to be the third largest global economy in the next few years, and as the current G20 president, it is India's responsibility to rebuild confidence in international trade and investments.
During the last 9 years, India has become the 5th largest global economy. This is the result of our sustained efforts. We embarked on the journey of reform, perform, and transform in 2014. We have increased competitiveness and enhanced transparency. We have expanded digitization and promoted innovation. We have established dedicated freight corridors and built industrial zones. We have moved away from red tape to red carpet and liberalize FDI flows.
The Prime Minister said open network for digital commerce will democratize legal marketplace, in fact digital marketplace, and also India has made immense stride with the Unified Payments Interface or the UPI for digital payments.
Technology's transformative power in trade is undeniable. India's shift to an online single indirect tax, the GST, helped create a single internal market boosting interstate trade. Our unified logistic interface platform makes trade logistics cheaper and more transparent. Another game changer is open network for digital commerce, which will democratize our digital marketplace ecosystem. We have already done that with our unified payments interface for payment systems. Digitizing process and use of e-commerce have the potential to enhance market access.
Meanwhile, India's Minister of Commerce and Industry Piyush Goyal is chairing the G20 Trade and Investment Ministerial meeting in Jaipur. Addressing the meet, the minister said that micro, small and medium enterprises play a crucial role in the global economy and need continuous support.
The micro, small and medium-sized enterprises play a crucial role in the global economy and need continuous support. As the Honorable Prime Minister said, maximum support. These enterprises are the backbone of our economies, driving innovation, creating jobs and contributing significantly to overall economic growth. It is important that we collectively work towards ensuring equitable access and participation for MSMEs in global trade. This certainly will help unlock new avenues for growth.
The 4th G20 Culture Working Group meeting is currently being held in the sacred Indian city of Varanasi. Delegates from G20 member nations, invitee countries and various international organizations will be attending the meeting. The delegates aim to arrive at actionable outcomes while putting culture at the heart of the policy making. A comprehensive report titled G20 Culture, Shaping the Global Narrative for Inclusive Growth will be launched in Varanasi at the meeting. Delegates will have the opportunity to experience world-renowned Ganga Aarti on the banks of River Ganga and also explore the beautiful history of Lion capital of Sarnath. The meeting will culminate in the Culture Ministers meeting on August 26th. And now we get to updates from the 15th BRICS summit that is currently on in Johannesburg. And world leaders at the BRICS summit have congratulated India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi on the success of Chandrayaan-3's lunar mission. Heads of state met Prime Minister Narendra Modi at a banquet dinner hosted by South African President and congratulated him for India's massive achievement. Accolades and appreciation pouring in for India for the feat it established yesterday. India becomes the only country in the world for the successful landing of Chandrayaan-3 at the south pole of the moon. Also on the successful landing of Chandrayaan-3, the President of United Nations General Assembly has congratulated India. Paulina Rubeck, spokesperson for the President, has voiced the sentiments. Let's listen in.
It is something that we kind of shared this morning. I mean, the President congratulates India, obviously. It was within the OPGA office, many of the Indian colleagues were celebrating that achievement.
India's ambassador to the United Nations, Ruchira Kambot, says that the successful soft landing of ISRO's moon mission, Chandrayaan-3, is a historic moment for humanity.
Let me quote the Prime Minister of India himself on this. India's successful moon mission is not India's alone. This is a year in which the world is witnessing India's G20 presidency. Our approach of one Earth, one family, one future is resonating across the globe. This human-centric approach that we represent has been welcomed universally. Our moon mission is also based on the same human-centric approach. Therefore, this success belongs to all of humanity, and it will help moon missions by other countries in the future. The Prime Minister went on to say that I am confident that all countries in the world, including those from the global south, are capable of achieving such feats. We can all aspire for the moon and beyond.
Moscow has also congratulated India for successfully landing a spacecraft on the moon's south pole, days after Russia's own mission crashed into the moon's surface. Russia stressed the importance of this breakthrough for the whole of humanity. Dasha Charnishova is in Moscow with more on this.
Russia congratulates India on the successful landing on the moon's south pole. Russia's space agency Roscosmos says the exploration of the moon is important for the whole of humanity. In the future, it may become a platform for the deeper mastering of space. Russian President Vladimir Putin also congratulated Indian Prime Minister, saying that it is a major step in space exploration and the evidence of India's impressive progress in science and technology. On the sidelines of the BRICS summit, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov also congratulated his Indian counterpart. Experts from Russia's Academy of Scientists say India made an important breakthrough that would keep the country among the most high-tech and industrial states of the world. But this landing took place just days after Russia's own mission, first to the moon in 47 years, Luna 25 crashed into the moon's surface. The craft was supposed to land on the moon's south pole too, but spun out of control after a problem preparing for pre-landing orbit. Russian scientists say most likely there will be no relaunch of the Luna 25, since the vehicles for the next missions are already prepared, and it will take a while to change their programs. Dasha Chernashova in Moscow, reporting for DD India.
India's historic soft moon landing has been celebrated around the world, including in the US, which has aligned itself with India's space program. Washington has plans to ramp up its own lunar exploration efforts in the coming years. Ira Spitzer gets us the details.
India's moon landing has created significant excitement in the United States. Bill Nelson, the administrator of the National Aeronautics Space Agency, better known as NASA, posted a message of congratulations on the social media network X, praising India for being the fourth country to successfully soft land a spacecraft on the moon, and wrote that he was glad to be a partner on the mission. NASA provided access to its deep space network of radio antenna for communications with the Chandrayaan-3 spacecraft. The historic achievement is also significant for the U.S.'s own space ambitions. Washington sees itself in competition with China, which hopes to send astronauts to the moon by 2030. NASA had hoped to schedule its own first crewed moon landing in more than 5 decades for 2025, although it recently said the timeline for the Artemis 3 mission could slip into 2026. Unlike China, the U.S. views India as a partner. During Prime Minister Modi's visit to Washington earlier this year, the country signed up to the Artemis Accords, becoming the 27th signatory. Those countries have agreed to share scientific discoveries and create safety zones, allowing countries to do their own work on the lunar surface without disturbances. The State Department also congratulated India on X, writing that your success will power the imagination and light the future of people around the world. U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan also praised what he called the historic landing and wrote that he looked forward to deepening our partnership with India on space exploration in the years ahead. Ira Spitzer reporting in San Francisco for DD India.
The United Kingdom has also congratulated India for its lunar achievements. Sean Beaver looks now at the reaction to the successful mission from a country that has had recent setbacks in trying to get into space.
The UK and India have long had a close relationship that's only been getting closer in recent months, so perhaps no surprise that there was a lot of praise for India's successful moon mission. The UK Space Agency was quick to send their congratulations on X, what used to be called Twitter, saying that history had been made. The British High Commission in India called it a giant step forward for the whole world. In Dublin, the Indian cricket team were keeping a close eye on proceedings ahead of their match against Ireland. When it comes to space, the UK is second only to the United States in terms of the number of satellites it produces. The space sector here employs almost 50,000 people, with a speciality in smaller and nano satellites. But it's not yet successfully deployed them from UK soil, instead having to outsource the launching to other countries. The most recent attempt here in southwest England was a high-profile failure when a rocket launched in mid-air from a specially modified jumbo jet had a technical fault and failed to make it to orbit. Virgin Orbit, the company behind the attempt, folded 4 months after the failed mission. So experts in the UK are well aware of how difficult successful space missions are, and all have been quick to congratulate India on a job very well done. John Beaver in the UK, reporting for DD India.
All right, so that sums up the international appreciation which India gained yesterday because of the magnificent feat of the soft landing of Chandrayaan-3 on the surface of the moon. And back home, President of India, Draupadi Murmu, has congratulated ISRO and the Indian citizens for successful deployment of Vikram lander's Pragyan rover onto the surface of the moon. Expressing excitement over the success of another stage of Chandrayaan-3, President Murmu said that she is looking forward to the information and analysis that Pragyan will acquire and enrich our understanding of the moon. Up next, a short break, but still to come on DD India News Hour. Extreme temperatures in Europe are causing environmental headaches, with crevices opening on glaciers on the highest peaks of Mont Blanc in France. Pressure is mounting on Japan as it begins to release contaminated water from Fukushima nuclear plant into the ocean. And tropical storm Franklin has made landfall in parts of Dominican Republic.
The gateway to Northeast India welcomes you to the land of untouched natural beauty and diverse history.
You're watching DD India News Hour and I'm Preeti. Let's get you more from the BRICS summit that is currently on in Johannesburg. BRICS leaders have unanimously expressed interest in expanding the bloc, although details on how it will work still need to be ironed out. More than 20 countries have made formal applications to be part of the grouping of the major developing economies. The bloc currently consists of Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa. The leaders meet today for the third and final day of the summit to discuss engagements with African leaders. Our correspondent Amritpal Singh reports from Johannesburg.
Final day of the 15th BRICS summit, it will see the leaders interacting with leaders from the African continent in the BRICS Africa outreach and the BRICS Plus dialogue. The interventions could see leaders suggesting that the partnership with the rest of the African continent be strengthened to strengthen the partnership between what is referred to as the global south or the developing world, to see that such large populations who live in poverty or are not cannot afford what the Western powers with the muscle, economic muscle that they have, how all that can be transformed. and also one would expect the Johannesburg Declaration to shed some light on the expansion of grouping as more and more members have expressed interest to join. Whether the leaders agree upon admitting new members in this meeting would be clear by the end of the day. With cameraman YK Loknath, this is Amritpal Singh for DD India in Johannesburg.
All right, Shubhendu is joining us from Johannesburg to get us more on how is the day planned ahead. Shubhendu, good morning. This is the final day of the engagements there in Johannesburg. Let us know more as to what is it that we look forward to during the day's ongoings there in Johannesburg.
Right, Preeti. Good morning from Johannesburg. Now, the day today, yesterday we saw the plenary session taking place where the core BRICS members, leaders sat together, spoke about the issues facing the BRICS grouping and the way forward. Today, the more expansive influence of BRICS is going to be on display. There are sessions on Africa outreach as well as BRICS Plus, which basically means the manner in which the BRICS nations, the leadership, will engage with the leadership of other developing economies, other emerging economies. There's a special focus on Africa. The theme also speaks about BRICS and Africa closer cooperation. There is, of course, there's been a lot of excitement about the expansion of BRICS. Who are the new members who are going to be part of BRICS? What will be the modalities? Those are the points that may also be discussed today in the engagements. Besides that, there are some bilaterals also lined up for Prime Minister Narendra Modi, especially with leaders from the African countries, Mozambique, Ethiopia. There is also a bilateral with the leader of Iran. So in that sense, there's a wider and closer engagement with the Global South on day 3 of the BRICS Summit.
All right, Shubhendu, there is, a lot of talk and speculation on expansion of BRICS. Close to 20 countries have given in formal applications to join the grouping. Can we understand more from you? Because this grouping began as a financial grouping, and later on the ambit of the grouping was expanded to summit level discussions. Let us understand more from you. How far has BRICS, come from that point? And also, when we talk of other developing countries expressing their intent to join the BRICS, why so?
Right.
When we talk of the timing?
Right. By the time now that BRICS is in its 15th summit, Preeti, we have to understand it has grown in influence and impact manifold. There are many challenges faced by the developing world, which this grouping, one of the most influential grouping of the developing world, of the Global South, has been catered to. It has been able to successfully mitigate the earlier dependence on developed economies, and therefore is making an important dent in the global order, in the sense that it is bringing in the centrality of the Global South, wherein the majority of the world population lives not in the same economic prosperity, not in the same infrastructure prosperity that perhaps the developed countries live. So in that sense, the influence of BRICS nations has increased, and therefore most of the Global South nations, developing nations, emerging economies nations want closer ties with this grouping, want to be part of these groupings so that they can directly engage in the development of the Global South and their development of their own countries and meeting their own national priorities. So in that sense, there is a great interest in a close engagement with BRICS. Over 20 countries have formally applied for it. There are going to be very, very stringent guidelines for the expansion, for the new members to come in. We don't know how many or who are the new members. We'll get some insight when the Johannesburg Declaration comes out, which is like the summing up of what happened in the 15th edition of BRICS sometime later today, local time, Johannesburg. But it certainly is a way forward. The BRICS leaders have also spoken about their openness, their willingness, and their interest, in fact, to invite more members into their fold. But the process is kept stringent so that the influence, the impact, the value of BRICS is not diluted.
All right, Shubhendu, now this summit comes just ahead of the G20 leader summit, which will be hosted by India next month. Can we assume this, or can we perceive this to be as a precursor event to the G20 event that will be hosted by India, given the fact that India is being recognized across the world as the voice of Global South?
Pretty more than precursor, because we have to look at BRICS and G20 as independent institutions and groupings. But yes, there is going to be a great interlinkages, great overlapping. After all, India's presidency at G20, there is greater emphasis on the priorities of Global South. We know that before the formal G20 engagements began, Prime Minister Narendra Modi made the initiative of engaging with, there's a conference of G20 nations from across the world. So in that sense, India has made its priority very clear that the voice of the Global South must be heard loud and clear. And BRICS, if we look at the congregation, is in fact the most influential congregation of the Global South nations. BRICS in its charter, BRICS by its inception and at its heart is in fact talking about the key concerns of the Global South nations. And in fact, Day 3, as I mentioned, is a day of greater outreach to the other nations of the Global South, from Latin America in particular, Asia, Africa, and the manner in which this grouping can in fact expand its influence and partnership with other nations, and that will also be reflected in significant manner at the G20. So in that sense, great parallels and great connectedness between the two major global conferences.
All right, Shubhendu, we leave it here. Thank you for joining in with those inputs. And that was our correspondent Shubhendu joining us from Johannesburg. And from here, we take you to Europe, and we'll get you the weather woes that are being witnessed there, and how the people are bracing the fury of weather. Europe's soaring temperatures are affecting the highest peaks of Mont Blanc in eastern France, causing new crevices to open up on its glaciers. Authorities are urging climbers to stay away from mountainous areas due to the threat of rockfall. Experts say the last few months of severe weather across the globe is due to human-driven climate change. Wildfires are raging near the Greek capital of Athens too. Officials say that hundreds of fires have erupted, including one in Evros, which is close to the Turkish border. About 150 people were evacuated in Athens from 3 nursing homes near Dadia Forest in Greece. At least 18 burnt bodies have been discovered. Intense heat has sparked wildfires across Europe, and the winds have fanned the flames in Greece. At least 20 people have already died. At least 5 people have been killed in the wildfires in Peru. The Apurimac region of the country is the worst affected. At least 200 hectares of vegetation have been damaged by the fire till now. Fierce wildfires are also spreading in neighboring Bolivia. Over 500 army troops have been deployed to the regions affected by the fire. And Tropical Storm Franklin has made landfall in parts of Dominican Republic, with forecasters warning the storm could dump up to 10 inches of rain, with locals fearing it could trigger landslides and heavy flooding. Schools and government offices have also been closed as a safety measure. Around 1.3 million people are under a tropical storm warning in South Texas and the Rio Grande Valley. According to the National Weather Service, Tropical Depression Harold brought 50 miles per hour gusts and torrential downpour that could dump 6 inches of rain in certain areas. Flooding is a concern, and strong winds could also cause property destruction. From Europe and US, we now take you to Asia. Japan has been discharging treated nuclear wastewater into the Pacific Ocean. The highly controversial project started on Thursday after years of planning. The water has been treated to strip it of radionuclides in a special facility after being used to cool molten fuel from the Fukushima nuclear power plant, which was wrecked by the 2011 earthquake and tsunami. Chris Gilbert reports from Tokyo on this.
The process is now underway. The first tanks of more than 1 million tons of treated nuclear wastewater is now trickling into the Pacific Ocean. On Thursday, about 200 metric tons of treated water is expected to be discharged throughout the day. It is going to be sampled, it is going to be tested to make sure that the levels of remaining isotopes and particularly tritium is in line with the calculated expectations, in line with the safety standards that have been agreed upon and approved by bodies like the IAEA. And if everything is according to plan, that will be doubled from Friday for another 16 days, after which point the floodgates are open, the system will be in full swing, and the discharge will continue for another 30 or 40 years. There remains opposition and there remains outrage to this project, particularly from China, the most vocal critic, saying that Japan must stop this wrongdoing, in its words, and that politicians from Tokyo should either discharge the water into Tokyo Bay or drink it themselves to prove that it is so safe. There is also ongoing opposition here in Japan. The fishing communities around the discharge area, around the nuclear site, have suffered brand reputation and import bans from many countries since the tsunami 12 years ago, and they're worried about ongoing damage to their livelihood after this. After so many years of trying to rebuild, they say the government has broken promises to win their approval before the discharge begins. They're also concerned, and the wider communities in that area, that part of the country, are concerned that the lessons learned from the nuclear meltdown are going to be forgotten, and this is going to impact their children and grandchildren and their communities for generations to come. Chris Gilbert in Tokyo, reporting for DD India.
Still to come on DD India News Hour, Donald Trump is due to surrender to authorities in the U.S. state of Georgia on Thursday. Global central bankers and economists are gathering in Jackson Hole, Wyoming this week for the U.S. Federal Reserve's Economic Symposium. And tech shares led a rally on Wall Street on Wednesday, with the Nasdaq index closing in the green for a third straight day. Welcome back. After the break, you're watching DD India News Hour, and I'm Preeti. Very quickly, we'll take a relook at the top stories we're tracking this hour. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has virtually addressed the G20 trade ministers meeting in Jaipur, saying trade and globalization lifts billions from extreme poverty.
We have moved away from red tape to red carpet and liberalized FDI flows.
Europe's soaring temperatures are affecting Mont Blanc in the French Alps, sparking fears over new crevices. Indian prodigy R. Pragnanda faces a tie-break today against world #1 chess player in the World Cup final. A Hong Kong ban on Japanese seafood has come into effect even before the Fukushima water discharge started. Authorities are warning Hong Kongers not to smuggle in seafood from the 10 cities and prefectures in Japan that are covered by the indefinite ban. DD India's Andrew Wood joins us live from Hong Kong. Andrew, good morning. Let us know more details into this ban. How severe is this ban, given the fact that Japan is still refuting the harmful consequences of the release of the radioactive water?
Well, I don't think that Japan, Tokyo's explanation and assurances that this is not a problem, that the water is well within safety limits, I don't think many people here in Hong Kong accept those assurances. There have been some small protests in Hong Kong in the past few hours about this. Don't forget, protests usually are frowned upon by the authorities in Hong Kong, especially if they're in favour of democracy. But if they're against Japan, it seems that they can go ahead. Now, Hong Kongers really seem to love Japanese seafood. There are 2,000 Japanese restaurants here in Hong Kong, and some of them are really very worried that they're not going to be able to stay in business. The shops yesterday, actually, if you went to the fish markets and the wet markets and the shops and the sushi places, they were actually quite busy because people were eating and selling as much as possible the last batch of seafood allowed into Hong Kong. Of course, those flights stopped last night. There was no point bringing any more seafood into Hong Kong if they couldn't sell it. And as you say, it's not a complete ban. It's seafood and things like seaweed as well, other aquatic products from 10 prefectures and cities, mainly in northern Japan, are affected.
All right, Andrew, also you tell us that there are close to 2,000 Japanese restaurants in Hong Kong. Tell us more about the impact it will have on the food industry there in Hong Kong, and also, is the ban temporary? For how long do we expect these restrictions to continue? Let us get more details from you on this.
Well, the government hasn't given a date for when the ban will expire or would expire. So it presumably is indefinite, and if Japan is going to be releasing this this radioactive water over the next 30 or 40 years, then it could mean the death of a lot of Japanese restaurants in Hong Kong unless they can get their seafood, for example, from other places. At the moment, 90% of the seafood consumed in Hong Kong comes from Japan. Hong Kong is the second biggest market after the mainland of China for Japanese seafood. And the market was worth about $500 million US last year. That's what the sales were like. So it's a great opportunity for seafood producers from around the world to try to get in here. There'll be, there's a lot of people are going to be missing their seafood. As I say, Japanese food, people love it here. So it's going to take a while, I think, for businesses to adjust.
All right, Andrew, we leave it here. Thank you for joining in. And after those updates from Hong Kong, we now turn focus to other stories that are making it to the headlines. India's medical body has said that doctors cannot prescribe anti-cancer drugs as well as morphine and codeine while consulting through telemedicine. The National Medical Commission of India says that only over-the-counter medicines used for common ailments can be prescribed through telemedicine consultations. India is making changes to its education system. Board examinations for classes 10th and 12th will be held twice a year, with the best score being retained. India's education minister says the move is aimed at reducing the high-pressure environment often associated with board examination. India's Defence Ministry has successfully test-fired an Astra indigenous beyond visual range air-to-air missile from the light combat aircraft Tejas off the coast of Goa. The missile was launched from the aircraft at an altitude of about 20,000 feet. In the northern Indian state of Himachal Pradesh, heavy monsoon rains are causing havoc, with at least 7 people dead and a number of national highways blocked. A red alert has been issued in half of the state's districts. Schools are shut and officers are urging people to remain vigilant. Let's get to more international updates. Wagner chief Yevgeny Prigozhin, who launched a failed coup against Russian President Vladimir Putin in June, was listed as a passenger on a private jet which crashed on Wednesday. Russian aviation authorities say that no one has survived the crash.
Russian authorities say mercenary chief Yevgeny Prigozhin was listed as a passenger in a fatal plane crash, about 2 months after the mutiny he led that brought the country into a crisis. This unverified video from a Russian news outlet is said to show the moment of the crash. Reuters used satellite and street view images to confirm the clip's location, but could not immediately confirm that Prigozhin was physically on board the aircraft. According to Russian authorities, the crash happened Wednesday evening north of Moscow, leaving no survivors. 10 people were on board the plane heading from Moscow to St. Petersburg, 3 of them crew members. State media is reporting that 8 bodies were initially found at the crash site, with search and rescue operations underway. Data from online tracker FlightRadar24.com shows a plane heading northwest and then shortly after 6 p.m., suddenly disappearing. Prigozhin soared in prominence after Russia's invasion of Ukraine last year. The 62-year-old's fighters led the assault on the city of Bakhmut in the longest and bloodiest battle of the war. In June, he spearheaded a mutiny against Russia's top army brass. President Vladimir Putin said that move could have tipped the country into civil war. He was supposed to move to neighboring Belarus under an apparent deal to end the mutiny. U.S. President Joe Biden said he wasn't surprised to hear the news.
There's not much that happens in Russia that Putin's not behind. I don't know enough to know the answer.
There was no immediate comment from Russia's defense ministry or the Kremlin.
Former U.S. President Donald Trump is due to surrender to authorities in the U.S. state of Georgia on Thursday. Trump has been charged with attempting to overturn the 2020 general election. He is one of the 19 co-defendants who have until Friday to turn themselves into Fulton County Court. Sally Patterson has more on this.
It's his 4th criminal case in less than 5 months. Former US President Donald Trump has found himself in courts across the country facing a plethora of charges, from Manhattan to Miami. And now he's due in Atlanta, Georgia, accused of attempting to illegally overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election. Taking to his social media platform Truth Social on Wednesday, Trump wrote, "Nobody has ever fought for election integrity like President Donald J. Trump. For doing so, I will proudly be arrested tomorrow afternoon." He's one of 19 co-defendants charged with a conspiracy to prevent Joe Biden from replacing him as president in 2020. Last week, a grand jury handed up a 41-count indictment, accusing those charged with engaging in a criminal enterprise and committing election fraud. The indictment says they pushed false claims that the election was stolen, harassed an election worker, and created fake electoral commission documents. Now, over the past few days, Trump's co-defendants have been booked at Fulton County Court, while others have made bail agreements with prosecutors. Trump himself has already negotiated a $200,000 bond and his release conditions. Now, these include only communicating with his co-defendants through lawyers and making no threats of any nature against the community, including on social media. Trump's been known to personally attack prosecutors in the cases he's facing. That includes Fannie T. Willis, the district attorney of Fulton County, who's leading this one. Trump denies any wrongdoing and has called the charges politically motivated. Sally Patterson in New York, reporting for DD India.
Republican U.S. presidential candidates take part in the first debate of 2024 campaign. And for more on this, Caroline Malone is joining us from Washington, D.C.
It was a remarkable debate, a 2-hour-long debate, in particular because, as you mentioned there, Donald Trump, who is the front runner for the Republican Party, did not take part in the debate. He wasn't on the stage. He'd said in recent days he didn't feel that he needed to be there because he's doing so well in the polls. The top of that list is the economy and the cost of living, which is affecting many people. Many of the candidates on the stage speaking out against the current President Biden's policies called Bidenomics when it comes to the economics of the country. Ron DeSantis, who is the Florida governor, he's the second in line in the polls after Trump. Then the third in line in the polls, Vivek Ramaswamy, who's a relative newcomer to politics. Climate change was also something that they spoke about. They spoke out against Biden again for his, they perceive it as a lack of quick reaction to what happened in Hawaii recently with the wildfires. Abortion also featured high on the debate, as did Ukraine. And all the candidates were asked if they would continue funding the military campaign in Ukraine against Russia. And what was very interesting about the questions that were put to the candidates tonight on Trump, they were asked if Trump is found guilty in any of the court cases he is currently facing, any of the criminal charges he's found guilty, would they still support him from the Republican candidate? And most of the people on the stage said they would. Now, Trump is facing 4 major cases, and it is remarkable that even despite all these court cases, he is still the frontrunner and far ahead as the frontrunner in the Republican Party to be the next candidate for president.
And global central bankers are gathering in Jackson Hole, Wyoming this week for the U.S. Federal Reserve's Economic Policy Symposium. Fed Chairman Jerome Powell will give one of the keynote speeches as representatives from around the world assess the health of their economies. Again, Caroline Malone reports from Washington, D.C.
The US is now thought likely to avoid recession, despite earlier dire predictions that growth would crash following the COVID-19 pandemic. The Federal Reserve has been increasing interest rates in the US since March 2022, which has pushed inflation down to 3% from its highs of 9%. Retail sales and home building numbers are strong, and unemployment is at a 50-year low. But the labour market is tight, with the second smallest monthly job gain seen in July since December. That's something Fed Chair Jerome Powell is likely to address at Jackson Hole on Friday.
He will address some of the structural, longer-term issues that we're facing as a country. These are the same issues that we've been talking about pre-COVID, in terms of we have a lack of demographics, if you will. We don't have enough people to do the job that is required, and we also have a productivity at a standstill.
Parts of Europe, including Germany and the UK, still have high inflation to contend with. That's not the case in Russia, though, where their currency, the ruble, is diving and now at a 16-month low. There's pressure on the economy in the wake of their invasion of Ukraine as military spending grows and imports increase faster than exports.
But now, a full year and a half later, oil prices are structurally lower, and sanctions are having this effect of having Russian oil exports traded at a discount. And so the balance of trade dynamics have really shifted, putting downward pressure on the Russian ruble. And now we're seeing that central bank kind of step in to support the currency.
China is enduring a recent economic slowdown, with their National Bureau of Statistics warning youth unemployment is over 20% and can't be ignored. There are also concerns of a real estate crisis, with Evergrande, formerly one of the nation's biggest developers, filing for bankruptcy. There's a slump in domestic and foreign investment in China this year, with a drop in demand for its exports because of a worldwide economic slump. Central bankers gathering in the United States this week will focus on structural shifts in the global economy, with resilience but also uncertainty likely to feature in their economic visions. Caroline Malone in Washington, reporting for DD India.
All right, so that sums up the updates from US. We turn focus to Europe now, where the downturn in the Eurozone business activity has deepened far more than thought this month. A survey reveals a broad-based fall across the region, particularly in Germany, Europe's largest economy, has been witnessed.
The downturn in Eurozone business activity deepened far more than thought this month. That's according to key data released Wednesday. The bloc's dominant services industry activity fell into decline, while the contraction in manufacturing output continued. The closely watched Flash Composite Purchasing Managers Index for the Eurozone fell to 47 in August. That was down from July's 48.6 and its lowest in almost 3 years. The number was below the 50 level, which separates growth from contraction. The services PMI sank to 48.3, its first time below the 50 mark this year and worse than analyst estimates. It all comes with consumers cutting spending due to rising borrowing costs. Official data showed Eurozone inflation was 5.3% in July, more than double the ECB's 2% target, but well below readings seen late last year. The pain was sharply felt in Europe's largest economy, Germany. Business activity there contracted at its fastest in 3 years to 44.7 from July's 48.5. But there were some signs of a turnaround in the bloc. The latest PMI survey showed the worst may have passed for manufacturing activity. It's been in decline since last year, but the headline index rose to 43.7 this month from 42.7. That was its first uptick in 7 months and beat analyst forecasts.
You're watching DD India News Hour. Up next, we take a look at the other stories that are making it to the headlines around the world. Dozens of people have been arrested in Argentina for alleged looting. Business owners in crime-affected areas say that they're hesitant to reopen their shops over a new wave of vandalism. Argentina's economy minister, Sergio Massa, says that victims of looting could be given up to $19,000 in aid. Norway has unveiled the world's largest floating offshore wind farm. It will generate 88 megawatt of energy to supply nearby oil and gas platforms. The 11-turbine field is located around 90 miles offshore in the North Sea. Environmentalists say the move is positive as it brings down the country's carbon dioxide emissions. Zimbabwe has extended voting until Thursday after a late distribution of ballot papers delayed polling in certain areas. A presidential notice issued on Wednesday said that 40 wards were affected by the delays. The current president, Emerson Mnangagwa, is seeking a second and final term in office. He became the president in 2018 after a coup ousted former leader Robert Mugabe in 2017. Australia's flagship Qantas Airways has posted big annual profits due to rising travel demands in the post-pandemic era. Qantas reported an annual underlying profit of $1.6 billion, marking its first full year of profit since 2019. The airline has also announced an order for 24 wide-body aircraft to meet the rising demands. And from an ABBA legend teaming up with artificial intelligence to a tech startup that wants to get into the boxing ring, up next we get to this week's big stories from the AI revolution.
From software that really sings to why chatbots are throwing some punches, this is Generation AI. YouTube is launching an incubator to help explore the use of AI in music. The Alphabet unit says the group will help gather insights on generative AI experiments at YouTube. The firm has signed up mega label Universal Music as a partner and is set to work with artists including ABBA member Bjorn Ulvaeus. Facebook parent Meta has released an AI model that can translate between dozens of languages. Boss Mark Zuckerberg hopes that will help drive his vision of a global metaverse where people everywhere can interact without linguistic divides. Baidu is waiting for a green light from Beijing. The Chinese tech giant beat earnings forecasts over the latest quarter and says it's integrating its Ernie chatbot into numerous products. But it needs regulators to okay a wider rollout to the public, and that hasn't come yet. AI could be entering the boxing ring. Startup Jabber has developed a system that can observe fights and measure 50 different parameters in real time. Boss Alan Swystrup.
And what it's going to give you is an automated count of strikes thrown, what's landed, the impact quality of the shots. But it's also going to do a lot of other cool things like generate automated highlights for you.
The system has already been put through its paces at a London boxing club. And AI-generated art cannot be copyrighted. That's according to a US court, at least. The ruling says only humans can get the legal protection, to the disappointment of artistic chatbots everywhere.
And after that interesting report, we now turn focus to sports. In the final of the FIDE World Cup, Indian Grandmaster R. Pragnanandha drew the second game against world number 1 Magnus Carlsen on Wednesday. The two players settled for a quiet draw in 30 moves after 1.5 hours of play in Game 2. Game 1 on Tuesday also ended in a draw after 35 moves, but it lasted much longer as Carlsen tried to chase a win with black pieces. The champion will be decided in the tie-break today. And up next, we get you a special report. A new special school is honoring Delhi-based athletes with intellectual disabilities who excelled at the Special Olympics in Berlin. Here's more from our correspondent Narayan Singh.
In a heartwarming celebration of inclusivity and unity, the management and students of New Asha Special School, run by Kanak Shikshan Sansthan, came together to commemorate Nai Ashaएं, a symbol of new hopes. The event took place at Vandana International School in Delhi. Dr. Mallika Nadda, the chairperson of Special Olympics Bharat, graced the occasion. She commended the school's efforts in providing opportunities for athletes with unique abilities.
It is very important that special schools and normal schools work together to bring about inclusion in the society, inclusion in the school, and transforming lives through the power of sports, what we look at. So inclusion is very important if we want to transform lives and if we want the normal students to know more about the disability sector.
The presence of BJP MP Ramesh Biduri showcased a collective commitment towards fostering an environment where everyone has an equal opportunity to shine. The main highlight of the event was felicitation of Delhi's exceptional athletes who made their mark at the global stage of the Special Olympics in Berlin 2023. In addition to the felicitation ceremony, the event featured a vibrant cultural program that showcased the talents and skills of students.
This will really sensitize the children of their students of their school also, and the children who are in school, they are the future of tomorrow. So they will today they will take them along, and so few years further they will be at some or other organization where they'll be working at a big level or a small level. So they will understand them better and they'll take them along.
It really fills my heart with pride to see that how special children are being groomed, and they made our flag high in Berlin. I've told that India has got the second highest medals in total after Berlin. We believe in the policy of serving the students, serving the nation. So this was a little bit in the same direction.
The event also served as a platform to raise awareness about the importance of inclusion. By hosting such events, New Asha Special School continues to contribute significantly to a more inclusive society. Narayan Singh's report, DD India, Delhi.
All right, that was indeed a positive and a heart-touching report. And with that, we end this edition of DD India News Hour. But let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X, which is formerly known as Twitter, and also Instagram. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Preeti signing off, and from all of us here in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India News Hour.